Okay, I mean you're already recording on your iPhone. Actually, I think that's actually an interesting thing to talk about because something happened in iPhones where my audio somehow sounds better on an iPhone than even when I'm trying to mic things.
It's a $1,500 microphone.
I guess that's what it is.
The iPhone is, I mean, on those are the things that, I just kept waiting for in life as one that came up, again, like we talked about broadcast quality and what was all the stuff that the world said you had to do for something to be professional.
Right.
And I think once you start realizing that there's a lot of just nobody really cares, and the internet kind of opened up space finally where there really was no more gatekeepers, right? When you think about just YouTube in general, right? It was sort of the final realized America's, funniest videos, like one. Like as long as, like you can hear it, you can see it. It didn't matter the resolution or the audio quality. If you could get what was the intended message, then that's all that mattered.
For sure. And then it became a thing too. I remember shooting stock photography for iStock. Excuse me, when I first started doing stock photography.
You did that. So I haven't asked you about that. Because iStock.
Yeah, so I did iStock, which was the beginning of sort of like the accessibility of a normal person to do stock photography. Because before, to get on with like Getty or Corbis, it was a pretty big undertaking.
And to acquire. So guys like me, like I was like, I never even got a quote from Getty Images. I was like, I'm never going to ask Getty.
Well, yeah, and
to get that. But I remember when I think iStock was the first one that I was like, wait, I can go get this image?
Oh, you're talking about a product you could afford as an art buyer.
Image, yeah.
Okay. Well,
you were doing the actual photography for them?
Yeah. So basically what I did is I knew a fellow. This is actually good because this is definitely a micro. One of the things I want to talk about here is I do want to talk about ways to have some side hustles.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of my life and probably a lot of your life actually is a side hustle. Yeah. Like maybe the whole thing's a side hustle, and it's just like which side is doing good.
Yeah.
And let's try to figure out how to monetize that. But so I had a friend, this guy Kevin.
Mine's more in one vein where I like yours is so like mine still follows. It's like one track and you kind of go off the track, but you're still going the same trajectory,
Yeah.
Where your stuff is literally like off the track, going one way, off the and that's what I like. But
that's the excitement. That's the exciting part to me, at least. But I mean, then again, honing back on the thing that you can do well at. I knew a guy, Kevin Russ, who actually ended up being one of their top performing photographers. He's still out there. He's got really, really cool wildlife photography. I would go check it out. I was shooting some behind the scenes footage on a short film, which it might have been a student thing, and he was talking about that he just started shooting for iStock, and this is 2005, I think.
Okay. Wow.
And I was like, and he was like saying, I don't know, man. I think he bought like an early Rebel, like an early Canon Rebel, and he was making like $400 a month or something, and I was like, what? Get out of here! You're telling me you're like, and he was a college student at the time. And so I was like, and maybe he's making more. I don't know. But after a while, he was actually one of their top photographers. And he's a really talented photographer. Yeah. So I'm not taking anything away from actually, I'm not saying anything positive about his work.
That's amazing, yeah.
But so he started doing that. And I was a professional photographer at that time. And I was just like, dude, wait, you just get a little bit of mailbox money on that?
Right, yeah.
And he's like, yeah, you can totally sign up and do this as well or whatever. And I was like, oh, come on, I don't know. And at the beginning, they were a little bit more discerning. He ended up making a lot of money. He ended up like actually being one of their, like I said, one of their top producers. And iStock, when they owned him, no longer is owned by iStock. They were acquired by Getty. Getty
bought them, right?
Yeah. So I started shooting, and there was a little bit of a learning curve, kind of getting into stock or whatever the case is, and kind of like getting more into studio lighting. I had done studio lighting, but it was more.
What did you shoot? Like what was like give me one example of something you shot for iStock.
Yeah, well, where it started off was I had a lot of just images I had left over. Shot a lot of events, weddings. So I had like pictures of really nice looking food, and I had pictures of so I was like, I'm not going to put that much time into this.
Right.
I'm just going to like try to give them the stuff that I already have.
You had everything saved, and you like knew where it was. The files.
I mean, I had to go through them again. I was using iView Media Pro back in the day. That was my cataloging software. It was good.
I just like that you said I've got some like pictures of steak and you actually knew you had like photos of food.
I had a lot of photos of food because of going to like weddings and events and things like that. I just had a lot of that stuff, and then I was like, I met a friend after that, a guy who also is very successful right now in iStock, and he also works for Getty. A guy named Ryan Lane, who if he listens to this, he'll be out there. But he's also one of their top.
Okay,
I mean, he's probably. As far as how guys monetize, I know they've done really well over the years, and it's kind of residual. I still think I make about $400 to $500 a month on that. Just and I haven't uploaded a photograph in probably 8 years or something.
Stop it!
I'm making the $400 to $500 a month game.
Hey, hold on, for real.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna have to. Okay, I want proof.
Oh, okay. Well,
I want
you can go look at my images.
I want like an email. Like I want to see the screenshot.
Oh, they're hilarious. So what I got into is I started working with my friend Ryan Lane, who was a very again, hi Ryan. He got me into shooting comedy photos because he was doing all kinds of just like kind of real nerd stuff. He's been on a lot of really gosh, I feel like I'm really hot if I'm blowing this thing out. I apologize. He's been on a lot of big ad campaigns and a lot of stuff.
iPhone, so
yeah, you could even pull it up. I know. We have the one piece of equipment we actually need. It's right here.
I love the bubbly. It's like literally in the frame. It's so rad.
Oh, is it right there?
Don't move it. It's
okay.
Awesome.
All right.
I'm right here, people.
So, Roundabout, I started working with him, and so we ended up doing a lot of comedy stuff. We had a studio. I had a space in Portland where I ran my photography business out of. So we ended up putting a more of a studio there.
Hold on. At its peak, what were you making?
I didn't make more than I think like $1,500 is the most I made a month.
Yeah, but $1,500 a month at its height, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's still those guys.
But to make $300-400 now a month, that drop still seems wonderful.
Yeah, well, especially I haven't done anything. I really haven't done anything, and it's unfortunate. It's a really fun gig.
Wow.
Well, it was interesting. I talked to Ryan. I don't want to say what Ryan was making, but he was making pretty good money, relatively good money.
Yeah, over $5 a month. Can we say?
Oh yeah.
Okay, that's all.
And then he ended up going. I think it was in New York. No, he went and visited some other guys who don't iStock. No, he went to Germany. I think it was because they have these like iStockalypse things or whatever where you would shoot together, and it's like it's ridiculous.
But see, that's another hustle. See, I love that. Like even within your hustle, they have a hustle.
Yeah,
they're building their little micro brand community.
Yeah, it's a niche of people for sure.
Yeah, right.
And there's so he went to one of these things in Germany. I remember telling me he's like, hey, these guys are making like $30,000 a month doing this, and I was like, he's like, I need to set my game up a little bit. I'm like, again, I'm not going to tell how much he was making, but he was still making pretty good money. But I was like, I mean, and they were doing a lot. I mean, they were a lot more attentive to the market. So like they had a warehouse space that had like a bunch of like kitchen crap that was like on casters, right? That you could make. Oh, we're going to make it look like a modern kitchen right now. You know what I mean? So because you definitely start finding out like healthcare.
Right.
I mean, healthcare, anything, right? There's a lot of money in that market or whatever the case is. So anyway, you kind of started to attack that. I didn't really do that. I just was like, hey, I got residual images. I'm going to throw them up and see what goes. And like I said, it did take a while, and then they got acquired. And I still have an account with Getty, and I still have an account that I can upload on that kind of stuff. And that was actually one of my side hustles. I had a little business where I was teaching people how to do kind of like a systematic style of uploading a week, so that you could like be like, hey, if you just, I mean, so much of this stuff, right, is just like, is it something that you're consistently doing, and whatever. This is old school business adage.
But more than that, the reason why I get excited by stories like that is, you could have just said, well, that's cool for him, or you could have said, well, I'm a real photographer. I'm not going to do stock photos.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess so.
There's a bunch
Those guys seem cooler to me than what I was doing.
Well, but again, I think because you seem to value the hustle and actually making a living.
Oh, yeah, got it, right?
Right. So, I mean, so when I hear that, I go like, wow, you actually went and figured out. Well, not figured out. You went to, well, I'm just going to go do it. I'll put the time in and the work in, and it's still making you money today. That's just
Yeah. No, and there's a number of things like that. Actually, I want to explore that I mean, this is actually one of the exciting things to me about working with somebody who wants to on this podcast, who's done this, right? Has actually taken a small idea and then found out how to actually capitalize on it. And I know this sounds just kind of like whatever anybody's talking about when it comes to like the whatever business guru thing. Everybody's got some kind of adage or it's a very small quip. Most people, what I've found is usually the negative is most people aren't really willing to do that. No. They're not really willing to say, I'm going to do 1 hour a day.
Right.
I'm just going to do this. I'm going to upload 5 images a day.
Right.
I'm just going to go shoot. I see a bunch of cool pictures where they're like the background of Windows 95, and I'm just going to take a picture. I might live on the Palouse, so I'm just going to take a picture of a rolling hill and make it look like that.
Right.
Which requires no lighting gear. It requires some amount of megapixels, which nowadays
I'm assuming
is whatever.
Right.
Going back around because I'm ADD, is that you were talking about the iPhone revolution.
Right.
And there was a time in the iStock thing where they started saying, hey, we want images that look like mobile uploads. And I remember putting them through an app and they're like, that's not it. We
look like, what do you mean by mobile uploads? Like they wanted something that looked more like off someone's phone?
Yes. They wanted stuff that actually looked
I think that
like
means they wanted, that means that in my hot take on that is they wanted, that was the new organic authentic.
Yes.
Right.
Well, right. Yeah. Well, the organic authentic. Yeah. I mean, you put your.
Which is why I don't even like doing audio, and it's funny you say that because that is why I use an iPhone. It's a $1,400 microphone, so it's good. But the reason why I don't try I don't try to put it on my chest or run a wire with a lob on it. That's a little industry talk there. Is because I think people when they hear my iPhone recording, they hear it's kind of in a room, they can tell like me and you are talking, and it's almost like they're eavesdropping a little bit.
Sure. Okay. You think that's a selling point?
I think it makes people feel more comfortable. I think when they hear really perfect audio, they hear, this must be a professional podcast. And that's great. So that's why I like what we're doing here. What I'm doing right now is we're doing 3 things. I have a live, right?
And somehow you're not seeing that can.
It's there.
Oh, it's there. Okay, you're just right over it.
No, we're
hovering over the can.
Sponsorship. We're doing that right now, right? So I'm communicating to my audience here, 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 people maybe, but then I can put out to my feed and maybe 500, 1,000 people watch. So that's going on there live in the moment, but it'll live on my feed.
Sure.
And I got the audio going here, and then people that want to hear it this way. But then you're doing this really nice room, really professional, but still kind of gritty. But like this is like old school, like this is like college radio, like what me and you are doing.
Dude, it has about the same budget, or maybe they have more budget than I have. I don't know.
Radio's got more. No, but that's what's cool. It's like you could obviously spend a ton of money if you wanted, but we're just using the technology that we have here. But yeah, that is a really interesting connection. Authentic photos.
Yeah. So whatever. You're just talking about how that happened, and that still is a thing. In fact, I would say it's more of a thing in some ways with a lot of the photography, the way it changed. In fact, the way Getty and iStock changed at one point, they had all. Okay, so my friend Ryan actually used to be the kind of guy who also would look at images that other photographers would send in, and he'd actually vet whether that's going to be the quality they want on iStock.
Wow.
So he got paid also to do that. So it was like he got paid a little bit by that, and good business model, right? They found the guys who were actually making great images and were selling a lot. And they said, we're going to use those guys to be the gatekeepers, right? We're not going to use just sort of like if you can sell a lot of images and you got a good eye for
that's really smart.
So they gave them allowed them to actually have more of a full-time job as they were starting out too. So anyway, they changed it down the road, and they said it was like, as long as it's not has some kind of really weird problem, we're taking it, because after a while they discovered that they could not dictate what was selling. They were like, why is this like something that looks terrible, hard flash, whatever the case is, and it's making that guy a bunch of money.
No, this is. I mean, you've teed up a topic that is so near to my heart, which is like this is what has happened with social media is that you don't get to decide what is high quality anymore. The audience gets to decide that, right? And
Yeah.
so now musicians and producers have known this forever. Ask any producer who makes beats, and they will tell you they've got their beats that they think are going to change the world, and then they've got their throwaway beats. And everybody wants their throwaway beats.
Well, how does that and that's funny. How does that translate? You worked with a lot of musicians, of course.
Yep.
This is something I've always wondered is, usually, at least when I was a kid and moving forward, song 2 on the CD was usually, or on a record, song 2, usually that was the one they wanted to sell.
Yes.
Maybe song 8 too, they also want to sell. But it's like there's something where it was always like, you listen to a lot of records and the first song is maybe kind of weird, or it's like experimental. And it's like, well, we know we got to get through that song, but song 2 is going to be the hit. How many times?
Which I believe, if your theory holds true, I believe With or Without You is track number 2 on Joshua Tree, which I think was their first single, but I have to go and look at.
Yeah, I mean, this is, I feel like there's something to this that is not, like, if we did some research on it, that there's actually like, there's a formula.
And by the way, I would always tell bands, when they'd say, hey, we're going to send you the record, there's a song we want you to hear, I'd always say, let's do the first track on the album. And they'd say, well, you haven't heard it. I go, then why'd you put it first?
So you're already questioning.
The first track is always, to me, who a band thinks they are. Always.
Okay.
Just
well, how many times then after you... when you're going to make a music video, okay, oftentimes, I'm not going to say always, I'm guessing sometimes you'll make things preemptively to an album release, or maybe you'll do it afterwards, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Probably not going to be the case. Well, I don't know. I can't really say what the case is. And like, I had a friend who worked in the music video industry, and I'm trying to think how they packaged the timing. He told me at one point, you would know more than me. Like back in the 90s, how did they do that? Like if, Foo Fighters are coming out with their record, are they like, oh, we got 2 videos in the can all ready to rock, like as we're sending out marketing materials?
Yes.
So that's the way it works.
Yeah. You're a month or 2 or 3 out
before the album is even launched.
Before it's launched, absolutely. Yeah, you're going to have 2 videos done before the album.
They already pretty much know the hits too. They might have even done some market research.
Some bands, like I do a lot of work with a band called Shine Down, and so they have songs that go to like active rock radio, heavy radio, top 40 radio, depending on what the album cycle is going to be. So you have some bands that will release that like hard rock song first to hard rock radio. They might have a different song that's going to like alternative rock radio, because there's so many playlists now.
Sure.
Now, of course, that still exists, but now it's just as much content as you can make for everything, every platform.
Yeah, there's so many avenues to get that product out. Probably doesn't. Okay, so as far as how many times have you made videos afterwards, or forget that. How about just even before that record comes out, the band realizes that they're like, oh, this throwaway song that we thought was, or maybe it was a B-side, whatever.
Right, yeah.
I wouldn't say a throwaway track. Some bands are better at that than others. Some bands, the whole album rocks. Sometimes it's like, we got 2 good songs and we bought them from a great writer and we know that this is going to be okay, or whatever the case is, but it's like, how many times was it like they were just wrong?
I mean, I have a incredible track record. Not me. I've just been providentially, like, I've been gifted for like 20 years. I was gifted the best scenario of every band I ever worked with. It was just weird, and it was either I just got the hit, or I got the second song, which was actually the hit. Because usually the first song, really good example, artist named Matt Nathanson. And Matt Nathanson had an album come out, and I think Car Crash was what they thought was the big hit. And I knew Matt, we were good friends, and they went with some director, everyone, like, this was the big song. And the video really felt like a music video treatment, like, artists performing with like a projector projecting images on the wall, but it also projects on him. Like you could just see what was written, and comes out and doesn't do anything. And then Matt calls me and says, "Hey, we did this video. I probably should have called you, but we didn't anyways. But turn out the song. I don't know." He's like, "But I'm just calling." And I was like, "Well, what do you want to do?" He's like, "Well, I think the song on the album is Come On Get Higher. Like, that's going to be the track." And I was like, "Well, where are you at right now?" He's like, I forget what state he was in. He's like, "But this week I'm going to be in Kansas City. Like on Thursday." It's like a Monday. I was like, "Well, I'll meet you in Kansas City on Thursday. I'll find a soundstage. We'll put up a really epic backdrop, like a textured backdrop, like a 40 by 40. And we'll go kind of portrait style. Just you in this backdrop."
I'm stopping you for a second because I want to ask, could you find like a letting and grip place? Like just, you're like, Kansas City, I'm going to call up the grip house or whatever it is, and I can get a 40 by 40 backdrop.
No, I knew I could ship the 40 by 40 backdrop.
From LA or somewhere. Yeah.
Schmidley backdrops, the best backdrops to this day in the industry.
Yeah.
Schmidley backdrops. And I was always influenced by portrait work. And to me, if you could take a distressed backdrop or a textured backdrop, right, and just kind of have it lit a little bit and then just light your subject, 10 feet in front of it. To me, that's as good as it gets.
Sure.
That's just gorgeous.
Yeah, I just think Richard Avedon.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? Like, just do that. And with a singer-songwriter, you can do that. It's just him and a guitar.
Sure.
There's no band, right?
It's intimate.
And so I was like, I'll ship a backdrop. I found a little sound stage in Kansas City, and they had like a 100 by 100 stage but they had the grids and the lights, and they were all there. Found a makeup artist. They had a grip that would work with you, electrician, on the sound stage, so he could do everything. I didn't need anyone. And I just said, all right, I'll meet you there. And then we came up with a storyline that we could do around Kansas City, kind of a breakup story, like every song's about. And didn't talk to the label, didn't talk to anyone. I just met my friend Matt Nathanson out there. We shot it, finished it. I gave it to him. And the song went on to be his biggest song to date. Huge hit. And
was this prior to the record coming out?
No, the record had just come out, and that's how they kind of knew that the first single and video wasn't doing anything.
Yeah, and that was obviously going against what they had pre-planned and what they had thought and all that kind of stuff. And
the brightest minds in their camp had decided that Car Crash, which is a great song, was going to be the hit, And I get it. Back in the day, you had to really gamble on what you were going to put your money behind. You were betting on a horse.
Well, and it's expense. I mean, at that time, obviously, if we're talking major label, those videos were not cheap.
No.
I mean, if you were actually going to capitalize on maybe doing something a little less guerrilla. Yeah. I mean, everybody costs money. I mean, we had my friend John, who lives in Portland now. Like I said, he was a music video commissioner. I guess he worked for A&M Records.
Yeah.
And
what was his name?
John Campbell.
Okay.
He was probably active in that area.
Yeah.
I'm guessing like mid 90s.
Yeah.
Mid 90s. But he brought in, he worked on some really, really big stuff. Some really stuff that who's that French guy who made a bunch of really weird videos?
Michel Gobli.
Yeah. Why? How can I forget this? It's Michel
Gondry.
That's right. Yeah.
Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah, I remember he brought in Michel Gondry on stuff or whatever. But like we're talking videos that were at least
those are Foo Fighter videos.
Yeah.
And those
are. I mean, we're talking. I mean, I'm guessing it wouldn't be hard to think that's a $500,000. $300,000 to $500,000 at least.
Mid 90s, 100%.
Kind of a thing, and there was money for it.
Absolutely.
At least, that was the whole business. It was like
because you had MTV, and if MTV
they were still playing videos.
The internet, before the internet, if you got a video on MTV, that was the gatekeeper. That was the billboard. There's only one billboard going down that highway, and if you were on that billboard, you were going to sell a million records. So it was worth the time and the investment, 100%.
And of course, they still screwed the artists. I mean, like in the sense, a lot of them still had to pay for. I mean, that got added to their account, but I mean, regardless of it, it's still.
That's a whole other. I mean, adults should know the contracts they're getting into.
Oh, sure,
right.
Well, when you're on drugs, it's hard. Okay, so getting back to the entrepreneurial aspect of it, see, because what you're just saying there, which is kind of what you're still doing, is you've got an artist that you believe in, right, or you think is he's just making good work. Yeah, you're going to drop what you're doing.
Absolutely,
you're going to go there, or you're going to bring him here, and you're just going to make it happen.
Yes,
you just did that recently for Paycheck,
absolutely,
the artist.
Yeah,
and you've got a bunch of really cool. I haven't seen all the stuff, but everything I saw, I was like, even if it looked like it was like, you're going to make this happen exactly where you are.
Right.
You're not necessarily going to like, you're like, I don't know if that was your bathroom. I don't know. Or whatever the case is. Like but I was like, the energy of that song is huge.
Yeah.
And when I think, and it looks completely professional. Sure. I'm not suggesting it's not, but I'm just saying, you're saying we're going to go to the locations that I have access to.
Right.
Because the thing that I've seen in my life, seeing where I've seen successful people make, and I think it's a personal success thing too. I don't think it's just monetary success. It's somebody who's actually going to say, getting this thing done is more important than getting it done perfectly, which I've talked about elsewhere, and probably not for anybody. But I see that's usually where people get stifled. They're going to say, well, everything's not coming together, so we're not going to do it, or we're not going to do plan B because plan A is better.
Right.
But you'll pivot. Yeah,
and I kind of live in the pivot, you know?
Yeah.
But a lot of that, again, is still based on it. Well, for me, my early work and a lot of my work now later in life, I didn't have the option to pivot. There was nothing to pivot to or from.
No, but you got hungry. You got hungry. So I guess this is the question. What made you hungry? Because that is the thing I see the most lacking. I've in my careers, I guess I've done photography mostly and now electronics. That's mostly what I'm doing. I have very seldom meet a hungry person. There are some people who are willing to go to a certain level, and I've met a couple.
Right.
But in my electronics thing, I've been like, hey, you do this, I'll pay for all the prototypes. Right. I think maybe we talked about that. But the thing is, all you can sell it here. I don't have to make any money. Right. Like whatever. I'll take my cost of whatever at the end, or maybe I don't take any cost, because the fact of somebody being hungry, if I witnessed it, I might be excited enough to be like, why don't we just put money up? In fact, why don't you just have it?
No, Paycheck's a great example of that. It's not that I just wanted to be a part of his career. I do.
Sure.
I wanted proximity.
Right.
I wanted to be able to hopefully become friends enough where he would trust me, and then I could ask questions because I was genuinely excited about what he was doing, but more than that, how he was doing it. What was his approach? How was he getting beats? What was his process? How was he making so much music from 16 to 18? How did he put out 4 albums?
Well, and it sounds really good. Actually, I'm interested. I mean, maybe you can let a little insider secret on this. Does he record all his own stuff?
No.
Yeah, because that's what I'm trying to say. I'm like, how many 16-year-old kids
that's what I mean.
actually have that production quality?
And I don't think he would mind me saying it, because I actually think it's not that I think he's brilliant, but I do. What I like about Paycheck is when I finally was able, and I had to, we're friends now, but I had to hunt this kid down.
Yeah,
he ghosted me for half a year. 9 months. It was crazy. Okay. And that's fine. No one is obligated to return a text, a DM, anything.
Sure.
I'm cool. I get it. People I don't return text to. I'm busy. Depends what day you get me. Anyways, shout out to my boy Micah, who is one of his producers, musicians that made the whole thing happen. But I wanted to know, like, dude, how are you doing? Because I want to be inspired. I want to know. I'm not trying to glom on for any kind of fame, or like, dude, how are you doing this? I want to know how you're doing this, right? And by the time we then became friends and we could talk, and I was like, How do you do this? And so this is a paraphrased version, just in case I don't have it exactly.
Because I'm gonna interject and just say this is a lot of what you're doing anyway with your business right now too. Is you want to figure out obviously the ways that are most effective, efficient.
That's it.
That is going to get people like success and whatever you're helping them with.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Anyway,
and I got a great example too of that. But he said something to the extent of, I just go on YouTube.
Okay.
And if I'm in a acousticy, dark, with a light jazz vibe that morning kind of song I'd like to make, I just type that. Light, acoustic, jazzy, dark, blah, 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 beat. And I pick and I buy and I sing or rap over it. I mean, I was like, are you kidding me? That is the decentralization of talent and access to people who are putting their photos up on iStock are now to go get free photos on, all the free ones now. I have the Over app, which is now the change, but like I can go into, I'm blanking on the names, but they have, I can get free photos all day long now. And now there's free photo sites.
Yeah, and they're making their revenue probably on advertisements or something like that. Yeah,
so the fact that that's how I was like, yeah. See, he's prolific enough in his head, but he's not going to sit there and make the beats. I mean, he could, maybe he has, but I'm saying, but in general, the idea, which by the way, I think I can tell this story. I was on the bus with Rascal Flatts once.
Okay.
And
the tour bus.
The tour bus. And I happened to be there the night that they were brought 50 songs to pick from.
Right.
Fully produced. Sound amazing.
But did it have a scratch vocal on it?
Had amazing vocals on it.
No, but it had somebody else's vocals.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was just like, yeah.
No, but not just someone else's. Like, these are good.
Right.
And they just picked their 10 for the album.
Yeah. That's all. I mean,
did Elvis Presley ever sit down and write a song? Probably not.
I don't know enough.
Right? So
I should know more about the king.
But that's my point. Who cares? Who cares if your drummer writes it or the guitar player? Are you I
guess it depends. It depends on where you want to be in the industry. Sure. It maybe matters. It doesn't matter necessarily for commerce, of course. In fact, there's really
I think it works the opposite.
There's really good songwriters out there who get paid good money to actually write good songs.
And listen, and I think putting out 10 songs every 2 years now for an artist isn't going to cut it.
Yeah, just to stay relevant, I guess.
Yeah, it's just an appetite thing, right? I mean, so I think we're going back to the days of singles, and then you could do a compilation later. Or that's why Kanye West just dropped 26 songs on his new album, Donda. It's like 26, 27 songs because, again, it's 10. You gave me 10. I waited 3 years for 10.
Well, and you can. I think that's also part of it too. Is like obviously technology, time. I mean,
do a reggae song one week.
Yeah, it ain't gonna. Yeah,
and then it's summer. Hey, it's summer. How about being relevant? You know what? If my favorite band drops a reggae song, and that's cool. I'm not like my favorite band just became a reggae artist. I don't like them anymore. It's like that's cool. Like everything's been.
It's cooler now than it. I mean, it was still cool when we were kids, but it's different.
That's it's just different. Yeah. Now anyone can do anything. There are literally no more rules in regards to who you are, what genre you're in, what category you think you fit in. That's the magic of where we're at right now. And so tapping into that on any level, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, from a creative standpoint, if you're producing particular things, I think it all connects because. That when you were doing photography before the iStock moment, I'm doing video production. I'm a filmmaker. Look, if someone pays my rate, I'm excited. If someone calls me and says, hey, we have a sprinkler head company, I'm into it. Like, I'm into it.
Yes, you are. That is one thing I know about you is you do get excited about your clients.
I always say the sprinkler head because my friend Simon Jones over at Yamaha, we just kicked off this great campaign with, he was the one that said that to me, in his English accent. He said, I think you'd be excited about sprinkler heads. I was like, why? Do you know someone? I had someone reach out yesterday. Good friend of mine called me. He said, hey, can I put you on speaker? I got a friend here. He's got this business. Go to this on Instagram really quick. Look at it. I looked at it, and it's a meat and cheese company.
Hickory Farms?
No, it's not Hickory Farms.
I'm just, but how rad would it be if you knew the guys who are the heads of Hickory Farms? I'd feel way cooler about you.
Well, but who was on this call to me could be the next Hickory Farm.
Sure.
And they're doing $7 million, gross a year, selling meat and cheese.
Man,
right?
I want a Hickory Farm shirt. Sorry, now that you just said that. Anyway, go ahead.
But right away I pull it up and I'm like, I'm in.
Yeah,
I'm in. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm in. He's like,
I love
what you
beef
want to
and
hear?
cheese.
I'm like, I'm in. That is, and I think for the longest time, enthusiasm really didn't get you much in this world. It always got you something face to face, but your resume didn't have enthusiasm. Your job fair person couldn't get you a job because of enthusiasm. There were so many hoops you had to jump through. And I think where we're at right now and where we're going, because you can communicate who you are and people can see who you are, there's a subset of people that love, like you were saying, who wants to get things done?
Yeah, but you see, that to me is, and that's one reason why I'm wondering, like I'm trying to think maybe I'll just share where mine came from. Where did my enthusiasm come from? I think it really came out of knowing everything changed for me when I worked for myself.
But there's
everything
gotta be a
changed.
punk rock background to you.
Well, I mean, what you mean as far as my own personal proclivities to music, or what are you talking about? Well, of course.
I mean,
Misfits, Dead Kennedys.
That's what I mean. So just stop right. Just stop there.
That's my jam.
Stop right there. Misfits, Dead Kennedys.
Yeah.
To me, that's all I need to know. I think if you have that background, to me, that is everything, because you know what it's like to know that the thing you're into, not everybody knows about, but there are a lot of people that do. You just have to go find them. And that album cover or that T-shirt or that vinyl pressing or whatever, or that record store you had to go to to get it.
Bubbles. In East Kent, it sucked. But anyway.
Yeah, no, and for me, it was Moby Disc.
Yeah.
In the Valley.
Moby Disc. That's a great name.
Right? I mean, like, famous, like, that's where, or Salzer's in Oxnard. It's where I got, Black Flag, Damaged Again. Like, that album, it's broken. I think it's Henry Rollins' first, the original singer in Black Flag.
Yeah, you're saying this is his first record.
Right? Like, that's where you got that.
Well, that was
the recordings. They had to record it in some weird studio,
and they were certainly not great recordings, but you can't replicate those recordings.
No,
you know what I mean? Like I listened to. I still can't get like Walk Among Us, Misfits out of something I want to continually listen to. And there's a sound that I'm like, these guys were not very good at their instruments either. But we're talking about like the songwriting is so good, or the melodies at least, and the energy is something that you can't replicate. So I guess there is an element of sort of like, this is the beginning of DIY culture.
Absolutely.
And
I think that's the punchline of this episode. Like, punk rock is the starting point for DIY culture.
Well, there was something optimistic about it because people tried something for the first time.
It is,
and then it worked.
It is quintessential entrepreneurship. Punk music and punk labels, and some dude figuring out where they were going to record this band and how they were going to get. how did you get an album made and printed?
Oh yeah,
in 1988
yeah.
or 1984. Like, are you kidding me?
Well, yeah, and if you did, well, and this is kind of this is where this is one of your big things, of course, is annihilate the gatekeepers, recognize where they're gone. It's very libertarian. It's very like and I revel in that kind of stuff too. So sure, Glenn Danzig was one of the first guys who's like well, not one of the first guys. One of the first guys I'm aware of who's like silk screening his own like record inserts. So he's making his own stickers. He's got his own mail in, get stuff. Of course, people have had businesses that do that kind of stuff. But as far as like making records,
it's 1992. It's 1992. I'm on Melrose Avenue, and at the end of at the west side of Melrose. And I'm blanking. It's that was one of the most famous comic book stores, and Golden Apple. I'm at Golden Apple Comics. I'm in the back, looking at the indie stuff, because now there's a whole indie revolution in the late 80s, early 90s in comic books, right? And I look over, and I see Glenn Danzig. And he looks over, and I go, "Hey," and he goes, "Hey." I go, and I just finished working with a band called Caius, one of my first videos I had done. They eventually became Queens of the Stone Age, but the original band was called Caius. And, I'm 20 years old, maybe I'm 20 at the time. And I say, hey, my friends in the band Caius, I think just opened for you. He's like, oh yeah, Caius, yeah. Those are good dudes. Oh, yeah. He goes, what are you reading? I go, oh, I'm reading whatever. I go, what are you reading, right? And at that time, though, I just started working, doing film still, though, for a comic book company called Malibu Comics. Whole other story. Anyways, I go, we start talking. I say, oh, I'm a filmmaker, music videos, but I'm also working with this comic book company. And he goes, oh, yeah, I know them. Yeah. And I go, if you ever want to come up, like, see everything. And Malibu Comics has a really interesting story, because they were the ones when Todd McFarlane and Rob Liefeld and Eric Larson, those guys, when they all left Marvel Comics to start like Spawn and all of that.
Image Comics was, I think, what put out that stuff, right?
So Image, the only reason why Image was able to exist was because Malibu Comics, a guy named Scott Rosenberg, did the distribution for them.
Oh, really?
So everything went through Malibu Comics. So everything at Image went through Malibu, because they knew they could do everything, but they didn't have anyone that could do the distribution, do the manufacturing.
Right.
So Malibu Comics did all that. Okay. Now Glenn knew that because he's a comic book geek, right? So I say Malibu Comics. He goes, oh, we're talking Image Comics and all that stuff. And he goes, I go, well, if you ever want to cruise up, he goes, well, here's my number, right? It's like a day or two later, I'm like, am I really going to call Glenn Danzig? And I call Glenn. I go, hey, it's Darren. He goes, hey, what's up, man? If you want to come up this week? He's like, yeah, let's do it. Next day, he cruises up and just reading comic books, going through the vault, going through stuff, hanging out, and got dinner and stuff. And then the next San Diego Comic Con, he's like, hey, make sure you get to my party, and this after party thing we're doing. And sure enough, I roll up this huge, weird, like after party, Glenn Danzig style. He's like in this like crazy chair with like, it looks like the cover of like a Kiss album or like a Conan the Barbarian.
Wolf heads, totally, purple.
Yeah, but there's like girls everywhere and guys and everything. And I cruise in and it's like, and he's like, hey, Darren, and we're just friends. And I just became friends with Glenn Danzig. And we just always talk comic books and stuff. And
and this is
hang out and it was just.
That's awesome. I mean, there's definitely the fanboy in me for sure.
Right. But it just, just to. For me, it's like that's Glenn Danzig. He's a friend of mine that we talk comic books about.
Well, and that's the weird thing about this guy too, right? Is you're talking about a guy who is enamored with horror films, comic books,
right? Yeah,
all kinds of like lowbrow.
Elvis,
of course, yeah. I mean, he just basically rips Elvis off, but in his own rad way.
Right. Yeah.
But you take a guy who literally he has to make his own thing.
Right.
He completely makes his own thing. Now, you got a lot of weirdos in the early 80s and late 70s. Punk rock music is actually a thing. So I don't know if there's a moment there, which I'm sure there is, where it's on like, oh, hold on a second. The Sex Pistols can say this about the Queen,
Right,
or they're
yeah.
going to say bullocks
Right.
on, like
And the album
on the
cover.
radio
Yeah,
or on the
yeah,
cover
yeah,
or whatever the
yeah,
case is.
right.
Maybe it's underground radio still, but it was like something about that was like, hey, hold on a second, we're beyond Led Zeppelin here,
Right.
or this is a
Yes.
different expression angle that. So maybe it gives, because I really think that is important. I think people do need, unfortunately, in some ways, I need it. I know I kind of need permission to do things, and I don't know why I do, but I feel like I need something out there to say, hey, like this is, even doing a podcast, someone saying, hey, I'll do it with you.
Right. Okay.
It's just somebody being like, oh, okay. There's some sort of validation that says
energy, though.
It is energy.
energy.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is there's something, it's energy, but it's also, there really is something that is, if you see a piece of what you want to do, you can either expand it or do the same thing, and you're just like, hey, I can do that. I don't know what it is about that, but maybe I'm just really like low on creativity or something. But there's something about where it's like, if I see that, when I heard that you could sell images on iStock, I was just basically like, no way. I didn't know that I could actually, I've got thousands of images I'm sitting on here that I could do, but just to know that I could do it.
Bro, that was me when I realized that this world was going to be about content, and your resume and your brand was going to be all about, what have you done? Well, have you done anything? Something I can see. I was like, I got thousands of things you could see. Like, I just posted hunting show stuff today on LinkedIn from these gator hunts I went on for this brand build in Florida like 7, 8 years or 9 years, 10 years ago. Like, it's insane. Hunting gators middle of the night. I was like,
sounds fun.
Right. So it's like, that's just one more thing to show people, like, this is what I've done. Like, when you work with me, you're getting all of this. You're getting a guy that's even got a little experience hunting gators. Like, I can do that.
Sure. You see, so obviously that is a part of your resume.
Yeah.
Because you can be like, I've done this kind of work before. Sure. Yeah. Like, I can do nature photography if I want to.
Right.
I'm like, whatever. I know how to do that. Because oftentimes, people are looking for a very narrow guy in that kind of a thing. So having a wild resume or having a varied resume has some degree of. It is nice to be like, hey, you've done a number of music videos.
Right.
I know that this guy's solid on music videos.
Right.
Whatever it is. It's still good to be able to have some things you do consistently. So my question with all of this is, because I think this is going to be a continuing theme anyway, as far as just seeing where that DIY, the punk rock, I don't need you. In some ways, I need permission a little bit. That's the way I see it.
Okay.
But I don't need your permission.
Right.
In some ways, I want to see that it's a possibility.
Or I'm the reverse.
Yeah.
I don't need permission, but I'd like you to come along. Right. So that's almost like, I'm like, no. As a matter of fact, I don't even want to talk to people about the stuff that I want to do. You know that. You texted me, and I was like, you wrote a bunch of stuff, and I was like, but I thought of it. So maybe we'll end with this, and we'll cue this up next.
Yeah.
But I thought about what you texted me and why I didn't respond. I just said, well, I don't plan things. I think because the difference between me and you is you've actually had to build things that are real.
Well, that's a whole discussion in itself, but sure.
I've only had to build things that don't exist. And they're not real things.
You mean as far as like a tangible physical product versus
like an
video?
idea? Yeah, like an idea we're trying to execute. Well, how long does that take? I don't know. When it's done. You actually build things that actually have to conform to the laws of physics. They actually have to meet a schedule. People order them. They have to show up, whether it's a restaurant you open or whether it's a new piece of gear that you build. It actually has to do something. It can't just be, well, and in the end, here's the video.
Sure. Well, but that's still the end of the project. You still did the thing. You got to. If you can't deliver the product by some deadline,
sure,
you can't be in this business.
But it never has to be repeatable. You actually have created things that have to be repeatable. I was thinking of just in general,
and they're different. But I honestly like as for as much as I'm saying, I'm. It's funny. Like for as much as we're talking about that kind of stuff, this is where I like to exist. I want to exist every day, throwing a dart at a bunch of Post-it notes on my wall and be like, it says yellow.
Right.
whatever, and I have to quantify that and actually make it fit into something I want to do. I'd rather,
and that's my day.
I would rather sit in that space all day, because that is the creative space.
Yeah.
I think just seeing other people do things, again, maybe it's better to term it as energy. And maybe I'll just wrap it up with this and say this. What I just want to know from you, because I kind of know a little bit about where I'm from. A lot of, I think, where I am comes out of rejection in a certain sense. Like I'm just like, I don't fit into your game.
Right.
So I'm going to have to make my own because I actually want to do something.
Love it.
But the thing is that I've found is that, maybe most of the people I deal with haven't dealt with the amount of rejection I have, or maybe what it is, but it's like there's a lot of people, again, who I just don't know why they don't have a hunger. So my question is, where do you think, and maybe, again, we can develop this further. It doesn't have to be a really long thing right now, but as far as why do you think you have the drive? Why did you have the drive at 20? Why are you working for a comic company? Why are you making t-shirts for bands? Why are you doing any of that?
I'm most likely doing that because I was pretty much raised by an older brother who's 7 years older than me, which is a big gap.
Yeah.
Right. So when I'm 13, he's 20. Right. And I had to keep up. I had to keep up, and I was always in over my head trying to keep up. And so I was always scared, still scared, always scared, but I just had to get over it. And I think because I was always scared trying to keep up with my older brother, whether it was violence, gangs, drugs, whatever, surfing, surf gangs, just gnarly stuff. I was always scared. I only knew how to work out of a place of fear that somehow you just have to push through it. You have to push through it. And whether I was hooked on that early or like nothing else except doing what I'm doing gave me that comfort zone. It just so happened that where I ended up being comfortable was I'm scared, I might get hit, or I might fail, I might lose everything. The idea of doing anything else, I just realized, wow, I need to be somewhere where there's just a lot of fear. Now, that's a really bad thing to get hooked on.
I don't know. I don't know if the thing is, when you say that, I resound with a lot of that. Like I'm thinking I would do, my dad was he was a medic in Vietnam, which means you have to perform well under pressure. Yeah. Without getting into a lot of family dynamics, I don't know, there's a lot of craziness, whatever. But I think that like, I also got comfortable. I do my best work. I know I do when I'm like, I only got this amount of time and all of the crap is on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And I can do it. I can be like, hey, you got to wrap that ankle right now. You shut up.
Right.
You shut the F up.
Right.
You need to get over here and grab this thing. And like, we can just make that thing happen. Right. So there's something about living in that. Again, it seems like I've also had a panic disorder in my life. I don't need to get into that, but I'm like, there's something that isn't great about always being in the adrenaline push, but but I'm not very good when I don't have that. I know that it is. Right. And like all the drudgery of the normal things as far as like, hey, finance and accounting and like that kind of stuff. I'm a business owner, but I hate that stuff. Right. I don't want to do it. It's like, I want to be in a place where like, we got to make it go today. We're going to do it. So there's something about, it's like, and if I don't do it, again, there can be problems that come out of this, but I would say it ain't going to get done.
But you know what's funny? And we'll end with our third, our fourth, fifth. We'll end with this.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Even right down to my taxes. It's the same thing. I wait to the end. Then usually there will be a flight I have to be on for 4 or 5 hours. And I grab my checkbook and I get on that flight the day before taxes are due and I do my taxes.
Like I am locked into one place right now for 5 hours. So I can do it.
I'll just do my taxes. And I go through, fortunately with my business, there's 10 categories. Was this food? Was this travel?
Right.
Was this a person I hired? Was this a piece of equipment? And I go through, but then it also gives me a sense of like, I get to kind of see the year in business, right?
Yeah.
But I don't plan. It's just that night before I do the taxes, right? Because I don't want to do finance and accounting all year long. I just
no,
right?
no.
Right?
I'm not far off from you on this.
And I don't know about you, but there is an amazing feeling when I go, I just got done doing my taxes.
Oh, it's a great feeling.
Just like the best. I don't know what it like. That to me is like, oh, I love it. I love it.
I almost have to feel it intensely enough, like you're saying, that I got to get it done.
Perpetual fear of being audited.
I have been audited. But that's a whole separate
Right,
story.
yeah, no. I mean, I saw my. But it's gnarly, right? Like you think like just even that fear alone.
Oh yeah, getting audited sucks.
Oh man, like
Yet the guy was nicer than I thought. Well,
Yeah.
okay. Well, this wraps up. This is a great episode.
I think we saved the world again. I'm going to be honest. I think we saved the world. So
if we're the guys
with our purple dank,
purple drink.
purple drink.
You don't even know what might be actually in here.
It's true.
Okay. Well, we'll keep it up again, and thanks again. Make sure you check us out on the appropriate places where you
All that
check
good stuff.
and
Follow,
things.
like, do all those cool